Karen bursts into the restaurant, demanding a VIP table for herself and her group of friends, claiming she knows the owner. The kicker? I own the place, and I had no idea who this woman was. I decided to play dumb and see how far she'd go. Later, during dinner, one of her friends audaciously asked if I considered my life meaningless because I was just a waiter. That's when I knew all bets were off. It was time for my payback. Here's how it went down. This all happened around the holiday season. My grandparents immigrated from Italy to Canada in the 1970s and opened this restaurant. When they passed, my parents took over, growing and expanding it over decades. I've been working here since I was 15. As my parents got older, they retired and became snowbirds, spending winters in Florida. A few years ago, they sold the restaurant to me, though they kept a small percentage of the stock as supplemental income, in addition to their savings. As soon as I took over, I modernized the old place. I renovated the entire space, updated the logo, and reached out to local and national media, inviting food critics, bloggers, and vloggers. It was slow at first, and I began to fear the massive loan I'd taken out was a catastrophic error that I'd single-handedly destroyed 3 generations of family legacy. But soon, things started to click. A local influencer included us in one of his videos, which prompted more people to visit and review us. Even on a Monday, we were quickly seeing 5 to 10 times our regular volume of activity. We became a destination for large events, and it wasn't uncommon for a celebrity to stop by on certain evenings. I even invited certain high-profile clients to visit and cook for our guests. This was incredibly expensive, but it meant we were fully booked. For the holidays, people had to make reservations in July just to get a table in December. It took years to get to this point. When things get busy, I'm not one to just hide in the back office. I'm always on the floor, doing whatever it takes, whether it's greeting customers, bussing tables, or mopping. On nights with high-profile guests or events, I wear a jacket and oversee everything. One night, 6 women walked in. 5 looked to be in their early 20s, with the leader appearing to be in her mid-20s. My best guess was she was an older sister or an older sorority. Sister to incoming college students? I was greeting guests at the entrance, and as they approached, the self-proclaimed Queen Bee was loudly informing her young companions how fantastic this restaurant is, how delicious the cuisine is, and how there might even be celebrities there. When she approached me, she explained she needed a table for 6. I responded, "Of course, may I have the name on your reservation?" She stared at me, then replied, "Oh, I didn't make one, but it's okay. The owner is a personal friend of mine. He always keeps a couple of tables open for special guests, and we can have one of those tonight." This is true for many high-profile restaurants, and I've been doing it recently as well. But I had no idea who this woman was, and she had never discussed any of this with me. I understood she was attempting to get in without a reservation, but she had picked the absolute worst person to try this stunt on. I told her, "I'm sorry, but we cannot seat anyone without a reservation. As you can see, we don't have any seats available." I held back from revealing I was the owner, not wanting to completely humiliate her in front of her friends. At that point, she ordered one of her friends to snap a photo of me. She announced that she would speak with the owner and make sure I'd be scrubbing toilets or jobless by week's end. The other girls behind her joined in, saying things like, "Yeah, say goodbye to your minimum wage job." I wasn't sure if they were in on it with her or if they truly believed she knew the owner. Queen Bee Karen then said, "Look, you can either give us a table or I can make your life very difficult. This isn't worth losing your job." She kept pointing, trying to belittle me, and then saying things like, "Clearly, you're nobody important here, because if you were, you'd know who I am, and never try to tell me anything other than yes or of course." She was constantly attempting to put me down and secure that table. By this time, it had been a long, frustrating day for me, and from my perspective, I had 3 options. 1, I could inform her that I am the owner and call her out on all of this. 2, I could simply hand her the table and let things go. 3rd, I could teach Queen Bee Karen and her minions a lesson. I chose option 3. I smiled at her and said, "Of course, ma'am. Please follow me." I led them to one of our 3 reserved VIP tables, typically held for A-list clients. I told her, "I apologize for everything, and you're right, it would be simpler just to give you the table." I also promised them the first 3 rounds of drinks were on the house. I seated them and personally attended to them as they settled in. I told them, "We just require a credit card and ID to keep on file, and we'll return them to you before you leave." Queen Karen confidently handed over her card, announcing to her minions, "Tonight's on me." I took their orders, gave them their free beverages, and informed them that, given how busy we were, their food might take a while. The girls only cared about the free drinks. They ordered 3 rounds and still hadn't received any food. They eventually called me over and asked me to check on it, all while giving me the worst attitude since they arrived. I told them I would look into it, but also asked if they wanted additional drinks. They ordered 2 more rounds. They were quite tipsy by the time the appetizers arrived, having only consumed alcohol on an empty stomach for the majority of the night and only picking at salads. As more food arrived, more beverages were ordered. What these girls didn't grasp was that they were occupying our VIP table, which typically commands a multi-$1,000 sitting fee. While I waived that, certainly didn't waive the cost of the incredibly expensive cocktails they continued to order after the initial 3 complimentary rounds. Furthermore, the table they were sitting at, as previously stated, was VIP. So, the menus were specially curated, lacking prices, a common restaurant industry trade secret for VIP sections. These menus also featured our most exclusive high-end items, white truffle dishes, black caviar, and specially imported West Coast oysters, among others. At one point during the night, I honestly started to second-guess myself, wondering if I was taking it too far with these seemingly naive girls. But certain things encouraged me throughout the night. For instance, when one of the baby Karens audaciously asked if I considered my life meaningless because I was just a server. Also, one of my staff told me they overheard them plotting how to mess with me, convinced they could always manipulate me into giving them a table. I overheard them say, "He's cute, but I'd never date a waiter. Such a pushover." There were other comments like that throughout the night, so I continued their life lesson. By the end of the night, each of the girls had racked up a personal tab between $500 and $600. I presented Queen Karen with the grand total, $4,232.23, including tax and tip. I've never seen somebody sober up so quickly. She went from smiling and giggling with her buddies to almost in tears. She immediately flagged me down, asking if this was some kind of joke. I took the bill, looked it over, and apologized. "I'll get you the correct bill amount." Again, she seemed completely relieved, assuming she had received someone else's bill, and muttered something about me being an idiot before continuing to talk to her friends. When I returned to give her the right bill, she lost it again. "Is there something on this bill you didn't order?" She and the girls were stunned and scrutinized every single line of the bill, including the initial several lines that listed their original 3 rounds as complimentary. They then got out their phones and meticulously added up the numbers. Queen Bee visibly panicked, stammered, "1 second, I need to use the restroom." Part of me feared she'd dine and dash, leaving her friends to foot the bill, but I subtly reminded her that we had her ID and credit card on file, just in case she had any grand ideas. 10 minutes later, she returned, her makeup freshly applied, but tears still evident. She launched into a tirade about how poor the food was, how dreadful the drinks were, and so on, demanding I at least cut the bill in half. She went on to say that her friends would chip in, despite her earlier declaration that the night was on her. Then, as if a light bulb went off, she once again brought up her supposed connection to the owner, as if that would suddenly compel me to have the bill. I smiled as I told her no. Simply, no. I cannot change the bill. She took out her phone and showed me a series of text messages from a contact named restaurant name owner. I instantly realized exactly what she'd been up to in the bathroom. Likely changing one of her friend's contact names and deleting previous messages to create this fake proof. I reviewed the messages and clicked on the contact information before, telling her that's not the owner's cell phone number. Her response was, "He has multiple business phones. Of course you don't know all his numbers," I replied. How about this? If we call him right now, and he tells me to take 50% off, I'll do it. Her response was to erupt into a full-blown tantrum, drawing the attention of the few remaining patrons. I knew it was time to end this, told her in a much sterner tone. Cut the act, little girl. You don't know the owner. You've never been here before. And if you don't stop screaming, I'm calling the police. Her tone changed as she attempted to defend herself as best she could. My response to her feeble retort was, my grandfather founded this restaurant. My family has run this establishment for generations. I've worked here almost my entire life. I am the sole owner of this restaurant, and I have never seen you, heard of you, or made any promises to a stranger I've never met until tonight. The other girls froze and had no idea how to react. Queen Bee was in tears. I added, now, I gave you the VIP table you demanded. One of our specially reserved tables for high-end clientele, which I didn't charge you for. I also gave you 3 rounds of free drinks. If you don't pay your bill, I will call the police and provide them with your identification. Karen signed the bill in tears, and the other girls sheepishly dug into their wallets. Handing her what little cash they had, probably a couple $100, with promises to pay her back later. 2 days later, a furious man showed up at my restaurant, demanding to speak with me. I was in the back office working, so he had to wait for about half an hour. Karen was with him, head bowed in shame. I took them both to my office and showed him key moments from our security cameras. The VIP area has particularly high-quality audio recording, a necessity for good record keeping due to some unrelated past incidents. I showed him the majority of it, their entire conversation, every order, everything. When all was said and done, he stormed out, berating her the entire way. I haven't seen or heard from any of them since, but the original bill I gave them, minus the $120 oysters, is now framed on my desk. As a side note, I didn't lose as much money on the VIP table or those 3 rounds of drinks as you might think. The table was going to be empty anyway, so there was no real loss of potential income. The cost of their food and subsequent drinks more than covered the initial complimentary rounds. So now that you know everything, am I the jerk? Perhaps the most shocking aspect of this whole Karen encounter, beyond the audacity to demand a table and then try to skip the bill, was their utterly warped worldview. That single comment about a server's life being meaningless truly stood out. It seems the OP was on the verge of easing up on his revenge plan. But then one of the baby Karens had to ask if he felt his life was pointless because he was just a waiter. Honestly, that has to be one of the most insanely entitled viewpoints we've ever encountered on this channel. It might not be as wild as some other tales, but the sheer fact that she genuinely perceives the world this way is just disturbing. There is absolutely nothing wrong with having a job, regardless of the income. This kind of snobbery often targets jobs like janitors, and I can't stand when people feel superior just because they don't do that kind of work. There's nothing wrong with being a janitor. I just don't get that mindset. But here, she not only believes it, she actively tries to mock him for what she thinks is a lowly job like waiting tables. One more thing. I'm glad this story had a somewhat satisfying conclusion, with the father trying to intervene but ultimately getting more furious with his daughter than with the restaurant owner. The only part that gave me pause was the restaurant. Recording audio at that table, I'd probably avoid a place if I knew my conversations were being taped. Anyway, I'm thrilled it worked out for the op. But tell me, how would you have handled this if it were your restaurant and these were your customers? Was the op a jerk or not, and why? Thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do, and hit that notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.